Welcome to the Foster Friendly Podcast, where we come together to make a difference in the lives of children in foster care and the families who care for them. Foster Friendly communities are part of a nationwide movement by America's Kids Belong that helps people from all walks of life take action and help kids and families thrive. You'll hear from former foster youth, foster and adoptive parents, social workers, faith and business leaders, and other experts on how to engage in meaningful ways. Our hosts Brian, Travis, and Courtney explore inspiring stories of everyday people making a difference in foster care where they live and work.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Foster Friendly Podcast. Today we're doing things a little bit differently. I'm your lone host. Usually there's two of us on here together, but today you just get me, Courtney Williams. And today I'm joined by two of my favorite people on this planet. Eli and Ayla Williams are two of my 9 children. And we, as a family, we initially got licensed when Eli was a baby, but we really got worried that it would ruin him and his life. And so we didn't take any long-term placements. We took our first non-respite placement when Eli was about 5 years old, and we've been licensed ever since. You could say truly that these two have grown up as foster siblings, and I know that they have a lot of insight to share to you. And a lot of people have fears around their biological kids and what it'll do to them, just like we did. And so I hope that you enjoy this conversation. Eli just graduated high school in December, and Ayla is a junior in high school. So Eli and Ayla, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so I love the looks that I get when I'm trying to explain our family to people. Actually, my husband and I just celebrated our 20th wedding anniversary, and we tell people that we've been married for 20 years, that we have been together for 22 years, and our oldest is 23, who was not with either of us before we got married. So people always kind of give us quite the look. They don't understand. But Eli and Ayla, you were our first 2 children of 9. You're not the oldest children, but you were the first of our children. So Eli, can you explain that a little bit further and tell people the makeup of our family?
Yeah, sure. So we have a family of 11, 9 of us kids ranging from 23 to 4. I have siblings from Ethiopia, the Congo, and siblings that we've adopted through foster care in Denver. Through the last, I think, 14 years, my mom was telling us this morning that it was then that we had our first placement. So we've been able to give a house to over 60 kiddos, and it's been really special for that.
Awesome. Yeah. So it's kind of fun to explain again. So Eli, Ayla, and Owen, our third bio child, are right in the middle. And then 3 older adopted kiddos, 3 younger adopted kiddos, and then 3 dogs and many other kids that come and go all the time. Also, Eli, it's kind of funny, when we first started fostering, we were not taking any long-term placements at first. And from that to our first placement being girls who were older than you at the time. And we had said we were not going to take any long-term. We were definitely not going to do older than you. And then our first placement came and they were older than you. Do you remember that first placement, and what do you remember about it?
Sure. I do remember it, actually. I was young, so I don't remember a lot of it, but I do remember thinking, I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. Like 2 teenage girls. It kind of felt like, oh, this is, felt special. The experience itself was new. So at the time, like knowing what I knew, like what I know now, it's definitely a lot different than what I saw and experienced when our first placement walked through the door. Like I didn't really know what was going on. Still very new, but yeah, I do remember it was very special. And I think it's pretty cool that even after all these kids and all these years later, I can still remember who they were and a lot of things we were able to do that weekend. So
that's great. Yeah, Ayla. So we had those 2 sisters. We've had a lot of pairs of sisters for some reason, but we had those 2 sisters that were our first placement. And then about 5 years later, we had another pair of sisters who just really tugged at all of our heartstrings, and yours particularly. Tell us a bit about those 2 and what was the hardest part about fostering them.
Yeah, so we had 2 girls, Brooklyn and Mari. Brooklyn was 3 and Mari was 5. Big personality girls, super sassy, lots of energy, but we loved them a lot. The hardest part was I went to camp. It was during summer that we had them. Went to a summer camp, and while I was at camp, they had left to go back with their mom. And I came back and they had already left, and that was just really hard, not being able to say goodbye, because those girls meant a whole lot to our whole family. And me especially, just being able to be with those girls and then not being able to be with them when they left.
Yeah, that was a really hard thing. I remember years later, like talking 4 years after they had left, one time I looked over and I saw you and you were kind of looking sad. And I was like, Ayla, what's up? What are you thinking about? And you said, I'm just thinking about Brooklyn and Mari and how I never got to say goodbye to them. And again, that was like 4 years after this had happened. So I know it definitely does emotionally pull at your heartstrings, and it's hard. It's not always easy. But you two may not know it, but one of the most common questions people get or responses people say to me when I'm talking about foster care, they have questions, is they say, hey, I'd really like to get certified, but I'm not going to because I have kids at home. And again, I don't want to ruin them, or I'm worried they'll get hurt, or I'm worried that it'll be too emotional for them. So I know that there's been a lot of heartache, like you just explained that situation. And there's been a lot of hard times over the years. But when we moved to Colorado, so we fostered in North Dakota for years, moved to Colorado over 6 years ago now. And my husband and I, we were like, you know what? We've done enough of this. Kind of felt like we had done our time. We're done fostering. But Ayla, you actually wrote us a letter. And that letter you left on our pillow one night, and you got, at that time, we had 7 kids. So you got all 6 of your siblings to sign the letter saying, Mom and Dad, you had told us this was a calling in our life. I still have this letter. I should have pulled it out, but you were like, we're all willing to share bedrooms, or willing to share our toys. And did God take this calling away, or are we still supposed to be doing this? We all think we should still foster. And again, you got all your siblings to sign it. And so we decided to get licensed again once we moved to Colorado. So Ayla, what was it about fostering that made you want to keep doing it? Why did you write that letter, if you remember, all these years later?
Yeah, I do remember that. It was a few things, actually. For one, I have always had a huge passion for kids, love kids, being able to pour into them, love on them, being able to watch them grow. And also, after doing foster care for a while, I don't know how long it was before that, but I knew the need for foster parents and knew what it took to be a foster family. And knowing that there was a need, there was no way that I felt like we could quit. And also knowing that God had called people, us, our family, to foster care and care for the orphan and the needy was just something that I feel like was something we couldn't stop.
That's great. Eli, you too, you are about to fly the coop. You just graduated. You're going to be joining the Marines and leaving this summer. What would you say, as now a just graduated senior, I mean, still call you a senior, but just graduated young adult, what would you say that foster care has taught you about life?
Sure. I think all my siblings and my parents would admit that when it comes to patience, it's pretty slim. Like it takes a good day for me to even have a little bit of it. But by doing foster care and, adopting and being able to be in those situations, there have been a lot of good conversations where it's like, even you, Mom, a kiddo walks the door, and it's like we'd sit down and have that conversation. Eli, like ahead of time, this kid's been through a lot. He's seen things you haven't seen, had to go through things you haven't gone through. And so I think that's what it's taught me is patience, one, but then also just realizing that you can look at people and automatically think a certain way about them without even knowing their story. So I feel like that's another huge thing I'll always take with me, whether I was going to the Marines or not, but especially going into the Marines, knowing that it's like I'm going to be dealing with different people on a daily basis. So knowing that, everyone's gone through their own tragedy, their own thing, but let's all work together and see if we can't make something beautiful. So, yeah.
Thanks, Eli. One thing that people don't know just by looking at you two is you are, yes, Eli, patience is not your greatest virtue, but you do have so many great qualities. And one thing about both of you two that other different people throughout our lives have said to us, these two are both so compassionate. And that is one thing. We have a little family motto on the wall. And one thing is we say, like, we are going to be compassionate family. But you guys had the same third grade teacher back to back. So again, years ago when you guys were smaller, the same teacher back to back, Mrs. Del Padre. And Mrs. Del Padre, after she had Eli first, of course, and then Ayla. And after Ayla was in her class, she came to me and she said, I've now had 2 of your kiddos back to back, and they both are some of the most compassionate kids I've ever had in my classroom. And she said, if somebody's hurt or somebody just looks sad, like they're the people that just jump up and they want to go help. And she looked at me and she goes, what are you doing at home? Like, I have grandkids now, and I want my daughter to teach my grandkids what your kids have. And I kind of sat there for a little bit and I was like, what? I don't know. What are we doing? And it dawned on me. It was like, it's foster care. It's what Eli just described is these kids come from all over the place. Most of them have gone through really hard things, and they're going through loss. They're going through trauma. They're grieving. Some of the abuse stories that we've heard that Eli and Ayla, we try not to share too much with them, but then kids will share stuff, right? And you guys hear just these stories that have got to make you look at life differently, like you, again, Eli just described. And that's what Mrs. Del Padre saw in you too. She saw something that was different. And again, for me as a mom, when people ask me that question, like, hey, there's something about your kids, again, the answer is foster care. Foster care has taught you guys how to love people in a different way that Dad and I could teach you how to love people, right? But we couldn't do it if it wasn't in our home to the depth that we've been able to. So changing story, it's changing gears just a little bit. Let's think about okay, you guys are foster siblings. I'm foster mom. I'm your mom. We get a phone call. Typically it's me that gets a phone call. I get a phone call about a placement, and kind of share with the listeners, what does it look like then? Okay, mom gets this phone call. Usually I call dad next, right? And then what kind of happens after we get that call for a placement?
Sure. So, I know for me, most of the time throughout the school year, Ayla or I will have sports. We're all big into sports. We usually come home, and it usually happened on a weekday evening. I don't know why, but that's kind of the timing of it. So most of the time we'd come home for our respective sports practices, and, mom and dad would be like, hey guys, we, kind of call us all together, let us know the situation. We're having this kiddo, this old, this is how we're going to accommodate for them here in our home. This is where they're going to sleep. If they feel comfortable, they'll tell us all a little bit of the story, maybe some us older kids, a little bit of what this kiddo's had to go through and how we can best love on them. And then after that, it's, we welcome the kid as they come in and just try to make them feel at home. Most of the times it ends with like a movie night, or kind of a fun night, just to kind of break some of the ice, and it works really well. Good system.
So can you guys say one thing that you didn't share that I think Dad and I have done pretty well is we pretty much always, if it's an emergency situation, we'll often take kids in for a night or 2 nights, and those ones we don't necessarily ask permission. But if it's a long-term call that we're getting, hey, this kid needs a placement, a long-term placement, mm-hmm. Do you guys agree that we always ask you guys your opinion about it before we just accept a placement?
Yeah.
Yes, for sure. Mm-hmm. Always.
Yeah. And for people that are listening, I think that's just a really important thing. Not that our kids rule our house, but especially now that we're a therapeutic home, we get a lot of teenagers. And so we always want to sit down our teenagers, all of our kids, but all of our teenagers specifically, and say, hey, this is the placement. This is where they, like Eli said, this is where they'd be staying in the house. This is the, as much of the situation we feel comfortable sharing with you guys. And then we say, are you guys comfortable with this? And by comfortable with that, we mean we don't want to take a placement and have them be in our house for a month. And then we say, well, sorry, our kids don't like this. So they got to go on and find another house now, right? That just adds to their trauma. And that's one thing we've tried to do. We've only one time so far in our 17 years of fostering have we said a kid had to move to another place because it was just really hard on the family. That doesn't mean we've had great placements, or easy, I shouldn't say great. They've all been great, easy placements since then, right? We've had a lot of really hard situations. But again, as a family, it's like, this is something we agreed to. And unless there's a real deep reason of why they can't stay, like the young boy that had to move on, it was kind of silly on our part for saying yes to begin with, because we had just adopted our youngest at the time and we were transitioning to a new home, all that. And then he came and had really high needs and was physically abusing our kids. So there are times when it might be best to say, like, and we said, we just don't feel like we can provide this kid the best place that he needs right now. And we were able to follow up, and we saw that he went to a therapeutic home at the time, went and lived on a horse ranch. He got great healing, was adopted by that family. So he had a great end of the story, but it is hard. And again, we don't want to add to that trauma. So again, for us, a big part of it is we have kids. If you're listening to this and you have kids, that's one thing you can take away, is to make sure you ask your kids their thoughts and their feelings about a placement before you just say yes to anything and everything.
And if I can add, I do remember it happens a lot. Another thing that I've really come to appreciate as living in your guys' household is you and Dad will always sit us down, make sure we know, Eli, this isn't Eli and Ayla. You guys are our 2 kid drivers in the house right now. this is not going to be easy because, they might have appointments you need to go help them get to and from. And, you guys really do make a point. So I think that's good to make sure the whole family knows, like, hey, these are the expectations and the needs. Like, this is something that's going to have to happen. It's not something that might happen. And let them know that this is a whole family ordeal ahead of time, and there will be sacrifices that be made, but sacrifices that are worth it. So.
Yeah, that is a great point. We have a large family to begin with, right? So I often will rely on Eli and Ayla to help, especially with our younger kids, like take them someplace while I take the foster youth to an appointment or to visitation, or sometimes we've had times where they're just having a really rough day and the kids just need to go to the park or go be somewhere for a while to get out of the house. So again, Eli, we have leaned on you guys and we appreciate you guys more than you guys know. Okay, so going back to that first, so we get that call, we chat with you guys, kind of what Eli described. Then Ayla, what's it like those first moments or hours or day when a new kiddo walks through those front doors? What is that like for you as a foster sibling, and what does it kind of look like?
Yeah, at first, everyone kind of meets the new foster kid or kiddos. Usually my youngest sister is all over them, so it's kind of like trying to make it as less overwhelming as we can. Give them space, kind of show them where they're going to be staying, kind of give them the rundown of the house, meet our pets, maybe see if they want to play a board game or something while whatever meal is being prepared. Like Eli said, we usually just do a movie night or get pizza or something. In the first few days, you're kind of just like getting into the flow of it, like of what it's like to have another person around the house, what the needs are, what the schedule's going to be like and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, people ask me, that's a question I get to, like, what's it like those first minutes, those first moments? And for us, we've never had a placement where we didn't already have kids. And so it's an easy transition we kind of let you guys do that work. And that sounds not because we don't want to give our time and our energy, but because kids are drawn to kids, right? And kids make kids feel comfortable. And so you guys actually, believe it or not, take the big load off of Dad and I when a new kid or teen shows up by just taking them around, because again, they feel more comfortable with you than they're going to feel with us in those moments. And it is a beautiful thing to see you guys giving them a tour of the house. And the board game is often a thing like, hey, do you want to play a game? And most kids have some game that we have that they love. And so they'll just sit down and play a game together. And Dad and I kind of take that step back and we're there, but we're kind of watching and listening and interjecting as we need until we can tell, like you can just tell in a person's countenance once they feel comfortable. And so we will, once we see that they're more comfortable, then we'll kind of dive in and start talking about more logistics of the house and stuff. Okay, so we are not going to pretend that this is all peaches and roses, especially on you guys, on us, on our family. It's not been an easy thing. It's been very hard emotionally and physically, spiritually, like all the stuff. We have been attacked by many different angles through fostering. And there's just a lot that goes into it, a lot more than the general public, I think, really recognizes and sees and knows of the pain and the hurt and the good and that, all that goes into our family on a day-to-day basis. And so I'm sure there's been times when you guys have been like, I just wish that we'd stop fostering, or I wonder what my life would have been like if Mom and Dad we'd never adopted or we'd never done foster care. But I know that there's also, and you guys have both told us in your own words at different times, like how much you appreciate this life and how thankful you are. And I know you guys love your adopted siblings so much. But Ayla and Eli, but Ayla, you go first. What would you say the hardest parts of fostering?
Yeah, I think there are a few. As mentioned before, sometimes it's saying goodbye. Like you get attached, you love on these kids and then they go back to their parents, which is really the aim of foster care. But sometimes it is really hard to say goodbye. And other times it's just like emotionally draining. Sometimes you don't want to have to entertain the kids anymore. You want to be able just to go in your room and read a book, be by yourself. So sometimes that's hard too. And other times it's hard to, it's just like hard on your family, on how they treat people in the family, and how just ways to like navigate that. So that's hard too sometimes.
Eli, what would you add?
I also wrote down saying goodbye, but apart from that, again, like I'm very slow when it comes to patience. So a lot of times it takes my mom, even when there's, kids have been through a lot. So there will be times when, kids are raising their voices and kids are, not in a sense,
Cussing,
they might be, they're having a little bit
cussing,
of a
punching
breakdown.
walls. You can say it, Eli.
Yeah. But it's just like, those are times when it's like, I like look over at my mom, I'll look over at my dad, and it's like, do you do something? Like, what are you supposed to do? But it's in times like those when it's like, it's times like those when you really need to realize, this kid has been through the ringer, and this is all he knows. And when people are starting to love them, a lot of times it's pretty new to them. I love them in the right way, at least. And so when they break down, it's something that you just need to continue loving them through. And for me, that's difficult, but I know it's also difficult for a lot of people. When you're getting yelled at, when you're getting insulted, and just
taken.
phones. Yeah. Like it's hard to love people through that, but I think it's just another one of the very valuable lessons and, good things that foster care teaches both you and your family.
Yeah. So speaking more onto that, Eli, how have Dad and I helped you guys through a hard placement or a kiddo that you just really struggled to connect with in the moment or just through that placement?
Sure. I remember, so I like video games, for instance, and we've had a few teens in the house that like video games is all they play. And I'd say my younger brother Owen and I, we love being outside. We love doing those sorts of things. All of us do. But even you guys encouraging us like, hey, we usually only allow X amount of time on TV, but let's connect with this kid and, meet him at his comfort level and build that friendship. And then even after doing that, it was like, taking a step back and approaching him. And that way we were able to, blossom a pretty good friendship with that foster kiddo. And that was a lot of fun. I've never played so much Mario Kart in my life, but it was worth it.
Ayla, would you add anything?
Yeah, I would say sometimes you guys even just sit us down when you guys can tell we're having a rough day, and just kind of remind us like why we do foster care. And you guys encourage us like, yeah, you guys are doing a great job. And I know this is hard. Sometimes they'll give us days off, like just go in town, go be with your friends, go have a sleepover, go take some time to yourself, just whatever. You'll just give us some time away and really encourage us.
And vice versa. Eli kind of alluded to it. We've had teenagers and not teenagers, but usually teenagers in our house who have thrown stuff at us, cussed at us, not allowed us to like move further because they're going to stand and not move, things like that. And one thing we know is the kids' behavior, and I think we've done well to hopefully of teaching you guys a little bit what we may haven't told you guys the word TBRI, but trust-based relational intervention, of how to connect with kids. And there's a reason behind their behavior. And when a kid is doing that, they're really telling us something. They're telling us they either need something, they're sad, they're thinking about something. There's a reason. They're not just standing in the doorway and not moving because they want to make the Williams family mad, right? They're doing it because something in their body is off. And I think we've hopefully explain that well to you guys. But even in the moment, sometimes Eli, you specifically, again, patience isn't always your virtue, but you have sometimes stepped up to be able to say, when there's a teenager, they're just screaming in my face and telling me off and talking to me in a really inappropriate way. There have been times when you've stepped up and you just stopped and stood kind of firm, not touching them, but stood there and be like, you will not talk to my mom this way. And I think sometimes when you guys step in like that too, it's probably more meaningful than because they're like, oh, this is a peer telling me this, not just Courtney telling me this, but this is a peer telling me this. And I think they take that differently when they hear that from you. And not only when they hear that from you, but the other thing, and I get this, like our caseworkers tell us all the time, we have a placement right now that is a teenager, and our caseworker always says the best thing for this kiddo has been in a home with solid teenagers who are teaching him what it should be like to be in a family, what it should be like to love his mom, what it should be like to be part of a family and help with chores and clean up and these things. And it is like, you guys are a huge part of the equation of our foster care journey. And I hope you guys really see that and understand that. Especially when we got those hard kiddos and, the kiddos that maybe are a little more hard to connect with or the same age as you. I think I was telling somebody else this recently that I feel like probably the hardest thing, like I said, Eli, we fostered and adopted out of birth order. We adopted kids older than you. We fostered kids older than you. And I think it's safe to say, Eli, you can disagree with me if you want, but that hasn't ruined your life. In fact, you were the one that kind of asked us to adopt older kids. But the one thing I've noticed is, not as for our family, I'm not saying this is every family, but for our family, it hasn't necessarily been birth order that has been the hardest. It's been when we have a teen or a kid that's like the same age and the same gender as one of our kids. So like Ayla, I know we had a teenage girl before we moved, our most recent move. She was like the same age, a girl, shared a room with you. And those seem to be the hardest ones, is when it's, again, the same gender, the same age as one of our kids. Birth order doesn't seem to matter as much, but that seems to be really hard. Would you say that you agree that those have been kind of the harder placements, is when it's a kid that's, the same gender as you and the same age as you?
Yeah.
Ayla, I also think that placement, again, I remember there were some times where you would get frustrated because she really liked to be in her room, and which was your room. And so you would often come out and you'd be like, Mom, like, she's taking over my room. Right. And that would happen. And you had to learn how to do that dance. She was with us for 4 months. It was a temporary placement. We knew she was moving on to an adoptive home. So you knew it was temporary. And I think that helped as well. But there were also some really sweet moments. I don't know if you remember, but there were some times when you guys would be up so late at night talking. And I would say, Ayla, you're making her stay up, or you're not making her go to bed. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. You guys should be in bed at 10. And you would say, but Mom, we were having the most meaningful conversation, or we were having a really deep conversation, or she was really struggling today and I was really helping her. Again, I don't think you two realize how much of a difference and an impact you've made on these kids in just staying up past hours, even if it's breaking the house rules or being on video games longer than we would typically allow, just connecting with them. So thanks for all that you guys have done. Okay, so I know you guys are both young. You probably feel like you're older than you are. I mean, you know how old you are, but you probably feel old. You're like mature, but you still are really young relatively in life. And I know you both have life goals and life plans, but they can easily change. Sometimes you think at your age, you know exactly what you're going to do, and then it changes. But I'm just curious, if I were to ask you today, I am asking you today, Eli, do you plan to be a foster parent someday?
Sure. I think the most simple answer to that question is I'd love to. I've seen what it has done in my life and my family's life. I've been able to make good friends, and I'll still walk through the halls of DHS, and, we'll have a place and walk up and be like, hey, how are you doing? And we'll just be able to, it's deeper than just a friendship. It's like, you were actually like a brother. You were actually family to me for a long time. So like, yeah, short answer, I'd love to. But I think which you and all the viewers would admit, it's like, it's a lot easier said than done. Because especially going to the Marines, there's a lot that entails with that. Now, looking into the future, like I said, I'd love to. If the Lord allows me and makes that available to me, 100%, I'd be all in to do that. But yeah, it just completely depends on where I am in, 20 years. So
I'm not gonna lie, that answer shocks me. I was expecting to ask this question, and I was expecting to get a no and a yes. So we'll continue the conversation.
I'll be completely honest with you. When it comes to foster care, for whatever reason, it's kind of like, I'm a little more hesitant towards it because, like I've said 3 times now, I'm not very strong in the patience department. So without people around me who can really help me, being able to actually be the parent in that situation, it'd take a lot. But adoption is definitely something that I could see myself going full into. So.
Okay, Ayla, let's see if you surprise me too. Ayla, do you right now in life see yourself fostering someday?
100% yes, I do. It's definitely something that I want to keep doing for the foreseeable future. I want my kids to be able to experience it the way we have, to be able to, learn these life values, how to be compassionate and patient, and how to, get along with kids, and even get along with the kids' parents, to be able to grow friendships and relationships through it is something that I want to keep doing, and something I want my kids and my family to someday be able to do too.
That answer didn't surprise me. Okay, I know I've already said it, but really, I hope you two know that you have made a lasting impact on many, many, many children and youth. Quite frankly, I would say as much as Dad and I have. In fact, when people ask us, how have you guys kept fostering so long? This has been years, and how do you keep doing it? And all the time, 100% of the time, my answer is Jesus, but our kids. Like, our kids are how we've kept fostering, because again, you guys help us so much, and hopefully we don't lean on you guys so much where you feel like we're just draining you, right? But kids, again, make kids comfortable. Kids make kids sad. Like, you guys have the ability to relate with them at a different level than Dad and I can, right? And again, the impact that you've made, the friendships that you've made, the brotherhood, the sisterhood that you've been able to form with them is just super special. And it is how Dad and I can say yes. Again, we ask permission, we take breaks, we do the things that we need to as a family, but you guys are what keep us going. And you guys are really great kids. So before we finish this, one thing I want to share, I wasn't planning on sharing, but I want to share this little story because I think it's for those of you that are listening, maybe that aren't foster parents, but to just know how you can make an impact on the kids that are already in the home. People ask us, like, how can we support the foster youth? And that's great, right? Or they're by our mom, or you as the foster parents. But people often overlook you guys. And you, like I said, you guys give so much of your time and your energy and your bedroom space and your toilet, like all the stuff. You just give and give and give. And I know Dad and I get worn out, so I know that you guys do too as well. And last year we had our first therapeutic foster placement. It was a really hard placement. And the placement left right at Christmas break. So Christmas break rolled around, placement leaves. We were going to North Dakota we're going to be there for a week. The day we got to North Dakota, we found out that my brother-in-law was in a bad situation, and he was coming to live with us with his 2 little kids who didn't know English and just were very needy at the time. And so we actually had to leave our Christmas break early. Just got done with the therapeutic placement, thought we were going to get a break. We left Christmas early. We did Christmas and left immediately to come home and then care for 2 little kids that needed so much of our time and so much of our patience. And I was super sad for you guys because I felt like you guys needed a break. You and me too, but I was like, my kids need a break. And I told some close friends that this was the situation, but I didn't tell them like, oh, my kids need a break. I did say I'm sure I said something like, I'm just sad. Like, we had to leave Christmas early. And we had 2 of our closest friends, Josh and Jinya, they called and they said, we are going to come pick your kids up and we are going to take them on a 4-day trip to Moab. I want you guys to just tell, because in that moment, honestly, probably the sweetest thing that's ever happened to me as a foster mom. And it wasn't foster, it was kinship, but it was still we were drained from fostering. And to have them come to our house and pick you 4 up, 4 of our kids, our 4 oldest that were at home at the time, pick them up and take you guys on a 4-day trip. What did that mean to you guys in the moment? And what was needed of you after that long fostering journey? And then now we have 2 little kids running around our house.
I think, I was just more excited to go to Moab. I didn't even realize it was more of a break, to be honest with you. I just thought it was kind of them just offer, hey, let's go to Moab. And I've always wanted to do this. Let's do it, because I love off-roading and whatnot. So, but thinking back on it now, that's definitely been I still think about the trip. I'll have the memories pop up on the phone, and it's like, oh, that was so cool. But I do remember, just looking back now, especially, it's it's pretty special to have friends and family and people like that in your lives who, even though I didn't see that was a break for me and my siblings, but they recognized the need, and they were right there to step in. So the importance, even though when you asked me earlier, hey, are you willing to do foster care? It's it's going to be hard if I ever do it, especially for me. But looking around and realizing, I have friends and family who would in a moment, set down their everyday lives, their needs and their plans, and we're going to wrap around you and we're going to help you, because not only helping you, we're helping this kid. And at the end of the day, that's what's most important.
Yeah. And for us as parents, and again, if you're listening and you're not a foster parent, but you can support a foster family in that way, our kids need those breaks. Our family needs those breaks. But I love the people. I'm sure you guys have people ask you guys before, in the middle of a placement, hey, Eli, how's it going? How's it going with so-and-so? Or how are you doing? Mom and dad hopefully ask you this question, but when you have a mentor or somebody from church or somebody that's close to us ask you that personally or take you out to coffee, I'm sure that it's just a different feeling of appreciation and feeling I'm feeling seen and valuable in the situation by people outside of my family. So a huge thing, again, that you can do if you're listening is to pay attention to the bio kids, the kids, not even just bio, but all of our kids are adopted kids as well, right? The kids of the foster families who are already in the home, who are giving so much, and think about ways that you can support them and rally around them as well. Okay, we're about to close this off. One question we like to end with is asking people this question. So I want you guys to both finish the sentence. Eli, what kids in foster care really need is
Family.
family. Simple as that, or do you want to expound on that?
Simple as that. All I need is people who love them and will love them and surround them like family. So they ultimately can go back to the family that they have. That's all I need.
And part of that, Eli, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm challenging you because I think you kind of said this in your answer too, is a lot of people will say, what kids in foster care need most is love, and just leave it there. And I always tell people it's not all they need. They don't just need love, right? But family are used together. Family makes mistakes. And these kids need to see, again, like you said, like their goal is to go back home with their family. And so if their goal is to go back home, we're going to teach them how to be in a family healthily and responsibly and all the stuff that goes into being a family. And that includes the bad stuff, right? We do have kids that come into our home that think, oh, you guys are a perfect family. And then we pretty quickly show them we're not a perfect family. Like there's no such thing, right? We argue, we make mistakes, we make each other mad, but hopefully we also show them how to repair those mistakes and what it looks like when you're arguing and now you come back together. So they learn how to do that.
100%. I think even just a recent example of that is, our last placement actually ended up being, especially to me, like, we're still friends. Like I said, passing in the hallways at DHS, and it's like, how are you doing, man? But, towards the end of that, beginning, it's just all argument. Like it was hard in the beginning, but towards the end, he'd come home and, we were friends. I could tell when he's having a bad day. And instead of going to his room, again, we both liked video games. And so I'd turn on the TV and let's play video games and talk. And so towards the end of that, it's like, he was even open enough to show me. He's like, dude, like, thank you. He thanked me. And then he just said, a lot of those kids haven't had someone who's really willing to sit down and ask them the questions that they're begging people to ask them. Like, what's going on? Like, what can I do to help you? Why was even the question of, why was your day so horrible? Like, what happened today? And how can I help you with that? So for him, that was the family. That is the family aspect. It's not all, giddy and all that. It's all about, when they come home or when they're having a rough go at it, that you still wrap around them and you still show them, you might be used to being alone, but now you're not alone. And so I think that's what family's all about.
Ayla, how would you answer that? What kids in foster care really need is?
I would say for you to get attached, for families to wrap around, not even families, but friends, community, teachers, but also just going back to to love them enough to hold them accountable, to set them to standards, not standards that you wouldn't set your other kids' standards to, but standards that will keep them accountable in life, to help them get good grades, to help them grow, to help them eventually get back to their family, to help them, make connections and stuff. So I think it goes against what a lot of people say is like, what if I get too attached? But no, that's what they need.
Thank you, guys. Wise kids. And your kids. Eli, I know you're 18, but you're still a kid to me. You always been my kid. My first baby. Eli, if someone's listening who's thought about fostering but has been hesitant due to their children at home, what encouragement would you leave with them?
I get this question all the time, actually.
Do you really?
I tell you and Dad this at all, but I think it was just the other day. I had one of my good buddies, Ridge. He reached out. He's like, dude, like, what's it like having siblings that are older than you, or having adopted siblings older than you, foster care siblings that are older than you? What's it like? How is that not hard? And I said, whoa, man, like, this is hard. Like, probably the hardest thing you can put your family through, honestly, as plain as it gets. But, the thing that I think Ayla and any other foster sibling would say is, these are my brothers and sisters at the end of the day. I'll have people come and ask me, like, Det or not, like, how was that adopting? I said, how was it adopting them? Like, are you asking me if I regret having my older siblings? Like, they're my best friends. They're my brothers. Like, I wouldn't trade that for the world. And for what? For being the oldest in the household, for having people that aren't your biological siblings older than, like, I feel like a lot of times we can get stuck, like, caught on that, where it's like, we miss the biggest point where it's like, no, this isn't a curse. It's one of the greatest blessings. And like, looking at people who ask me this, like, a lot of times will kind of end in like, oh man, like, I never thought about it like that. It's like, just go and ask anyone. Like, don't be afraid to ask, because it's a good question. Don't be afraid to go ask people that. But I love that question, because it's always, a look on people's faces when it's like, sometimes they'll ask a question that they don't realize is so black and white to the people who are actually going through something like that. It's like, this is my family. These people, my family, even if they're foster placement for one day, that's someone that we can now, like I said, I walk by in the community, and it's like, it's deeper than just a friend. It's deeper than just a quote unquote foster kid. It's him. We've shared something, we've probably shouted at each other and gotten arguments that, even me and some of my siblings haven't gotten into. And it's a bond that you, like you said, kind of like quote unquote sisterhood or brotherhood. It's like that. You walk around, it's a connection that's deeper than a lot of people see or realize. And so if people are doubting, what are my kids at home? Again, like I said, it's hard. People ask me that all the time. It's caused pain, it's caused heartache, but it's caused growth, and it's caused, like you said, a deeper bond with people around you, and a whole mindset. It's caused me to, be able to go out into the world and see it in a completely new light. Because these are all people around us that need help and need love and need the kind of, being able to be wrapped around. And the only way that you can do that is through loving them like family. And that's what foster care and adoption provides. So.
Thanks, Eli. Those of you that are just listening, you can't probably know, but I'm actually crying, because it just, this is the question that it hangs people up so much. And I could look at our family and again, point out all the heartache and the hard things we've gone through, but it has been such a beautiful journey. And people ask me all the time, would you choose it again? And it's hands down, yes. This has been a hard, beautiful, wonderful journey for our family. And, we don't continue fostering. We haven't adopted to be saviors, to save people's lives, but we do hope that we have made a difference. And we do hope that we've changed their lives for the better, that we've shown them, again, that family is messy, family is beautiful, family is wonderful, but family's worth it. And hopefully they're willing to fight for their families as well, whether they're adopted, they're fostered, unified or not, their families in the future. We just want to show them something special. And again, you two have made that impact. So I'm actually in the middle of writing a memoir, mostly about our foster care and adoption journey. And I pre-wrote one of the chapters, because again, this is the question I get all the time, is what about my kids at home? So I pre-published one of the chapters of my book because I wanted people to have this content right now. And it's called Navigating Foster Care with Your Children. And it goes through 10 different things that we try to incorporate in our family before kids in our home, while kids in our home, so during a placement, and then after a placement. And I also have I came up with some questions. My kids even helped me with these questions of things that families should ask their kids before they start the foster care or adoption journey. So if you want to check that out, we'll have the links the link to it in the show note. It's like $2 on Kindle right now. It's not about making money. It's really about just getting it out there. And again, it's one chapter out of a future book. But I want people to have that information, because we've learned a lot. We've been doing this for many years, and we have learned tremendously, just a tremendous amount of things to do, to not do. We failed. My kids can look at you and tell you, yes, we have failed daily. And we want you guys to learn through our mistakes and also the things that we've done well. So check that out. Eli and Ayla, thank you so much for being with us. And for those of you that are listening, I encourage you to share this with somebody else that you might know that's been thinking about foster care. Again, maybe if they have kids already in the home, this might be a little encouragement to you, but also give you some just deep, real, raw feedback into what it's like. So Eli and Ayla, if you have nothing else to close with, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, will you help us reach more people by subscribing, sharing the podcast with a friend, and leaving a 5-star review? If you've been inspired by what you've heard today and want to learn more of how you can make a difference for kids in foster care and the foster families where you live, visit americaskidsbelong.org. We depend on individual donors to fund our work. We'd be grateful if you would consider joining us as a monthly donor. Visit americaskidsbelong.org to make your tax-deductible donation. Thank you. Together, we can ensure a family for every child in foster care and a foster-friendly community to ensure every foster family feels loved and supported.